my mom yelled into us, come here, the Beatles are on TV. They're getting ready to go on TV. And that was the first time they were on Ed Sullivan. And so I stuck my head in there and listened to it, and what I saw just overtook me. It was just like, that's what I want to do right there. And so from that time on, I knew in some way, shape, or form I wanted to be in music, but I chose rock and roll, and I was in high school, and it was in a matter of about 6 months that I started a little rock and roll band. We played in our garage all the time and got good enough to play a lot of the school dances and opened some concerts even in Bakersfield for some pretty neat names. So it was fun.
Now, you just mentioned the Beatles, so we'll set them aside, and we'll set aside your mom and your dad for a moment. But who would you say were some of your other earliest musical influences?
Well, let me think back. I like I told you, I liked rock and roll more than I liked country. I loved my dad and I loved my mom, but I didn't like twang that much. And so I would say, I listened to a lot of Beach Boy music. I liked the harmonies and the ways that they sang. And, I kind of got into surfing at one point, and so the Beach Boys were kind of a natural. There was, gosh, I remember when I was real young, I used to like Pat Boone and some of the guys that really, Ricky Nelson,
Oh, I love Pat Boone. He did my first show here a few weeks back.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice man, very nice man. I loved Elvis. I loved Rick Nelson. Just when I was very impressionable in my music, I listened to a little bit of everything, but country was not really on the top of my list.
So at what point, Buddy, did you realize that you wanted to pursue music as a career?
Well, that came about. It took a little bit longer. I knew that music was fun. I didn't really ever think about it as me being a recording artist or having a career at it. My mom, when she got remarried, I was about 14, 15, and she was a singer, as I told you, and she traveled around a lot doing her own little personal dates, and her manager had sent her up to Alaska. She went up to Alaska and worked in this nightclub up in Alaska, in Fairbanks, Alaska, for about 5 weeks. And when she came home, about 2 days after she came home, I walked into my living room one day with my brother, and after school, and my mom said, "Boys, I want you to meet your new stepfather." And we were both just like, "What?"
Just like that? Wow.
Just like that. And so I was like, wow. And, I kind of looked at this guy, and I'm like, he doesn't look like much. And I was taller than he was, because I sprouted up fairly early. And then I found out a little later on that he'd a couple of years before, he'd been in prison and had a criminal record and all kinds of stuff.
This was just going from bad to worse at that point.
It sure was. And but you know what? Everything turned out all right, because this guy learned how to play. He was a guitar player. He learned how to play guitar, and he learned how to sing. He was a pretty good songwriter. And so for 21 years, Merle Haggard was my stepfather. And my mom and Merle were married for that long, and I got exposed on a daily basis to a lot of the stuff that Merle liked. And I listened to Merle, and I really liked his singing, because he wasn't that twangy guy that I had grown up to not really like that much. And so Merle also brought in a lot of other guys' music, and also brought them to the house a lot of times. Guys like Waylon and Johnny Cash. He was pretty good friends with Johnny Cash. Willie Nelson still is good friends with Willie. And a lot of comedy type records. Merle was a great, funny guy. He still is a funny guy. But guys like Glenn Campbell, you know, and Merle's music, and that kind of grabbed a hold of me about the time I became 17 or so, and I was listening a little bit more to my dad's records because they stopped being quite so twangy and started featuring a little more guitar, and I could relate a little bit more to that when songs like Act Naturally were coming out and Tiger by the Tail and those kinds of things. So getting to where I was liking more of my dad's music, and Merle Haggard and Johnny Cash and Willie and Waylon and Glenn Campbell and those kind of guys, I sort of took an interest in country, and I asked my dad one time. He was doing a Marines Toys for Tots show in Bakersfield, and I was still in high school, and I asked him if it would be possible if I sang a song on his show. And he had only heard my rock and roll band, and he said, "No, you can't do a rock and roll song on this country show. No way." And so I said, "No, I won't. I promise." And he said, "Well, do you know any country music?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, sure." And so I actually learned 2 of his songs in about a week, and he let me sing. The first song I sang was an old rock and roll song called "Long Tall Texan," and a pretty funny old song. And so my dad on that first show, I mean, I was barely 18, and on that first show, he stood behind me, and I'd seen the pictures many times with him and the band standing behind me, and my dad would, you know, when the crowd would start applauding a little bit, he'd raise his hand like, "No, don't do that, don't do that," and all that would do is make the audience clap louder. And so, you know, that was a real buzz for me. I thought, this is great, and so I had planned to sing 1 song and ended up singing 3 because the crowd was just really into it, and of course it was in Bakersfield, and you know, my mom was there and she was very proud, and a lot of their friends were there, and you know, and they were all pulling for me. And so you know, it was just one of those nights. It really changed my life, and I knew right then I would like to pursue this in some way, shape, or form.
But you actually decided to go to college first.
Right. Yeah. I decided, and you know, also my dad and mom and other people had said, you know, very few people make it in this business, and so, you know, get your education while you're young, and you'll have a lot of time to sing after that. Well, I said okay, and you know, at the same time, I managed to have the best of both worlds because I was I had started I was a radio announcer. My dad bought a small radio station there in Bakersfield, and
KUZZ.
Yeah, KUZZ, and he gave me a chance to be on the air, and I was afternoon air personality and janitor, and so I had an interesting job. And then during you know, when I was off during the summer, I could go with him on his show and ride on the bus with the guys, and I got to know, you know, the Buckaroos really well, and a lot of the other artists that we carried around that were opening his shows and things like that, and it was just the best experience that a teenager or young man could have trying to break into the business. I was very, very fortunate.
And was that around the time that you decided to use as your stage name, Buddy Allen?
Yeah, Allen is my real name. Buddy is a name that my grandfather gave me when I was a couple of years old. He'd be ready to go someplace and say, "Come on, buddy, let's go," and that just sort of stuck. And so the next thing I knew, I was always Buddy. And I remember whenever I started school, you know, first couple of days they'd call roll and they'd call out Alan Owens, and you know, I didn't answer. I'm like, it stunned me a little bit, and so finally I realized they're talking about me, and so I raised my hand, and that's how that was really the first time I'd ever been called Alan. And so whenever it came time to, I got a chance to record with Capitol Records.